When my grandson Ethan looked me in the eye and said, "You lied to me all my life," I felt something inside me break. Not loudly, not like glass shattering, but quietly, like an old tree cracking in a storm, roots giving way after years of holding on. He stood in the doorway, tall, trembling, his hands clenched into fists. He was 24, a man already, but in that moment, I could still see the little boy who used to run to me with muddy shoes and call me Nana. And now, he looked at me as if I were a stranger. The truth, the one I had buried for decades, had finally come to light. And it didn't set anyone free. I wanted to tell him I had done what I thought was right. That I had protected him the only way I knew how. But the words stayed in my throat, heavy as stones. He turned away. The door closed. And I stood there in silence, surrounded by the sound of rain and my own heartbeat. Sometimes, love means keeping secrets. But sometimes, those secrets grow roots too deep to ever pull out without breaking everything around them. My name is Grandma Helen, and this is my story. Thank you for being here and listening. It means more than you can imagine. If you're watching or listening right now, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel, so you don't miss the next story. And tell me in the comments, where are you from? I love knowing where my words travel. Maybe you've lived through something similar. Maybe you, too, have loved someone enough to lie, just to keep them safe. I raised Ethan since he was 2 years old. His mother, my daughter Lily, passed away young, far too young. Lily was my only child. She had Ethan when she was just 19. She wasn't ready, but she tried her best. Back then, we lived in a small town, quiet streets, neighbors who all knew each other, a white fence that Thomas, my late husband, built with his own hands. Thomas and I adored Ethan. When Lily was struggling, working 2 jobs, trying to finish school, Ethan stayed with us most nights. He'd fall asleep in Thomas' old armchair, his tiny hand curled around a toy car. I can still see his little face when he'd wake up in the morning and whisper, "Pancakes, Nana." And I'd laugh and say, "Of course, sweetheart. Always pancakes." Lily loved her son deeply, but she carried a sadness inside her that I never fully understood. Sometimes I'd find her sitting by the window, staring out at the street. When I asked what was wrong, she'd just shake her head and say, "Nothing, Mom. Just tired." But I knew there was more. One evening, she came home pale and trembling. We sat at the kitchen table, and she whispered, "Mom, I made a mistake." That's how I learned about Ethan's real father. It wasn't the young man she had dated back then, the one everyone assumed was Ethan's dad. It was someone else. Someone older. Someone married. She told me his name, and I remember feeling the air leave the room. He was a man respected in town, a man whose reputation would ruin everything if the truth came out. Lily begged me not to tell anyone. She said, "I can handle it, Mom. I'll raise Ethan myself. But please, don't let him ever know." And I promised her. I'd protect that secret. I didn't know that promise would outlive her. A few months later, there was an accident. It was raining hard that night. Lily was driving home from work, too tired, too distracted. They said she lost control at the curve near the bridge. When the police called me, I dropped the phone. Ethan was too. He wouldn't stop crying for her. Thomas and I took him in without hesitation. From that day forward, he was ours, in every way that mattered. I told him his mother loved him more than life itself. But I never told him about his father. Not once. As the years passed, Thomas and I did our best to give Ethan a happy, normal life. He grew up strong, kind, and curious, always asking questions about the world, always dreaming big. Thomas used to say, "He's got Lily's eyes, but your stubborn heart." And I'd smile, pretending that was enough. When Thomas passed away, Ethan was 16. He cried so hard that night. And when I held him, I whispered, "It's just you and me now, my boy." He nodded, his tears soaking my shoulder. From then on, it really was just the two of us. Ethan went to college in another city. I missed him terribly, but I was proud. He called often, sometimes just to ask for recipes or to complain about laundry. Then one day, the calls became less frequent. Then they stopped altogether. When I asked if everything was alright, he'd say, "Yeah, Nana, just busy." But his voice sounded distant, not just in miles, but in heart. I told myself it was normal. Boys grow up. They drift. But deep down, I felt something changing. A year later, Ethan came home for Christmas. He looked older, tired, thoughtful. He hugged me tight, but I could tell something was on his mind. During dinner, he asked, "Nana, can I ask you something?" I smiled. "Of course, sweetheart." He hesitated. Then he said quietly, "Why don't we have any pictures of my dad?" My fork froze. It was such a simple question, and yet, it felt like a knife. I said the words I'd rehearsed for years. "He left before you were born, darling." He wasn't ready to be a father. He frowned. "Did you know him?" I nodded. "A little." He didn't push further that night. But the next morning, I saw him in the attic, going through old boxes. He was searching, and I knew it. A week later, he went back to the city. And for a few months, everything seemed fine. Until one afternoon, my phone rang. It was Ethan. His voice was shaking. "Nana," he said, "I know." My heart stopped. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" He took a breath. "I know who my father is." The world tilted. I didn't ask how. I didn't have to. Small towns keep secrets poorly. Someone must have told him, or he found something himself. He whispered, "You knew, didn't you? You've always known." I closed my eyes. Yes. There was a long silence. Then he said, "Why didn't you tell me?" "I was trying to protect you," I said softly. "Protect me," he shouted. "From what?" "From the truth." He was crying now. I could hear it. "All these years," he said, "I thought my father didn't want me. But you let me believe that." "You lied, Nana." "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I promised your mother." "I don't care about promises." I needed honesty. Then the line went silent. That night, I sat by the window, staring into the dark. The house felt empty again, the way it had after Lily died, the way it did when Thomas passed. Only this time, it wasn't death that took someone from me. It was truth. For weeks, Ethan didn't call. When I tried to reach him, he didn't answer. I sent letters, the way I used to, handwritten, with care. No reply. Neighbors would ask, "How's that handsome grandson of yours?" And I'd smile, pretending everything was fine. But every night, I'd sit by the window, hoping to see his car in the driveway again. Then one afternoon, months later, I heard a knock at the door. It was Ethan. He looked different, older, harder somehow. He stood on the porch, ice cold. I opened the door slowly. "Ethan," I whispered. "Come in." He didn't move. "I just wanted to say," he began, his voice trembling, "you should have trusted me." "I did," I said softly. "Every day." He shook his head. "No. You trusted your secret more than me." I wanted to hold him, to explain, but I could see in his eyes that he wasn't ready to hear it. So I said, "I understand." He turned away, and before walking off, he said, "I don't know if I can ever forgive you." I closed the door and leaned against it. For the first time in years, I felt truly old. Old, not in age, but in heart. Because the boy I loved more than my own life now saw me as a stranger. The days after Ethan left felt long and quiet. The clock in the living room ticked louder than usual, marking the hours that passed without his voice. I tried to keep busy, gardening, baking, knitting, but everything reminded me of him. The empty chair at the table, the dusty photo frames, the unopened box of his favorite tea. Sometimes, I'd hear the sound of a car outside and rush to the window, thinking he had come back. But it was never him. I thought I had lost him forever. Then, one Sunday morning, a letter arrived. My hands trembled as I saw his handwriting on the envelope. It had been months since I'd heard from him. I sat down before opening it. My heart was pounding. Inside, there were only a few lines. "Nana, I met him. I needed to see for myself. I don't know how to feel. Ethan." That was it. No greeting. No love. No anger either. Just confusion. And I understood that feeling all too well. 2 weeks later, he called. His voice was calm, distant. He said, "I went to see him." He didn't deny it. I swallowed hard. What did he say? He said he was young and scared. That he thought Mom would be fine without him. He paused. He cried, "Nana." I closed my eyes. "I see." Ethan sighed. "He has another family now. A wife, 2 kids. They didn't know about me." The words hit me like a wave. That man, the one who had caused my daughter so much pain, had gone on to live a peaceful, happy life. While Lily had died young, and Ethan had grown up fatherless. It didn't feel fair. But fairness doesn't always exist in real life. Ethan came home a week later. I hadn't seen him in almost 6 months. He stood at the doorway again, but this time his face was softer. I invited him in. We sat in the living room, the afternoon light spilling across the floor. He said quietly, I asked him why he never looked for me. I looked up. And what did he say? He said he thought it would ruin things for everyone. That it was better if I never knew. Ethan's voice cracked. Better for who, Nana? For him. I didn't know how to answer. So I reached for his hand. He didn't pull away. That alone felt like grease. After a long silence, he said, "Why didn't you ever tell me about him? I could have handled it." I looked at him, my boy, now a man, and said softly, "Because I was afraid." "Afraid of what?" "Of losing you," I whispered. "Afraid you'd look at me the way you are now." He blinked, tears glistening in his eyes. I went on. "Your mother begged me to keep it secret. She wanted to protect you from the shame, from the gossip, from growing up knowing your father didn't choose you. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought love meant shielding you." He took a shaky breath. But love isn't hiding the truth. I know, I said quietly. I learned that too late. He looked around the room, the pictures, the familiar smell of cinnamon and old wood. Then he said, I don't hate you, Nana. I just don't know how to feel anymore. Tears filled my eyes. That's all right, I whispered. You don't have to know yet. Just don't shut me out. He nodded slowly. We sat there for a long time without speaking. Sometimes silence is the only bridge left between two broken hearts. That night, after he went to bed in his old room, I stood at the window again, looking at the same stars I used to show him when he was small. Back then, he'd point and say, that one's mommy's star. And I'd tell him, then it'll never stop shining, sweetheart. I whispered into the dark, Lily, if you can hear me, please help me fix this. And for the first time in months, I felt a little peace return. The next morning, Ethan came into the kitchen, rubbing his eyes. The smell of pancakes filled the air. He smiled faintly. Still making them, huh? Always, I said with a smile. Some things never change. He sat down, and for a moment, it felt like old times again. We ate quietly. Then he said, I told him I don't need him in my life. Not now. I looked at him gently. Are you sure? He nodded. He made his choice years ago. I just needed to see him once, to close the door. I reached across the table and touched his hand. I'm proud of you, I said. That took strength. He gave a small smile. Maybe. But I still feel angry sometimes. I feel cheated. I nodded. You have every right to feel that way. But don't let it harden you, Ethan. Anger can build walls that love can't climb. He looked down. I'm trying, Nana. In the weeks that followed, Ethan began to visit more often. He helped me fix the garden, paint the fence, even drove me to church on Sundays. It wasn't the same as before. There was still distance, still quiet moments that used to be laughter. But there was something growing again. Something small. Something healing. One evening, as we watered the flowers, he said, I used to think you were perfect, Nana. I chuckled softly. Oh dear, far from it. He smiled. Yeah, I know that now. But that's okay. I think I love you more for it. I felt tears rise again. You always did have your mother's heart, I said. That night, he found an old photo album in the living room. He sat beside me, turning the pages slowly, pictures of him as a baby, Lily holding him, Thomas laughing by the porch. He pointed at one photo of Lily and said, she looks happy there. She was, I whispered. That was the day she told me she was keeping you. Everyone told her not to, that it would be too hard. But she said, he's mine, Mom. I love him enough for two. It unclosed the album gently. I wish I could remember her. You do, I said, smiling softly. Every time you smile, or forgive someone, or chase after a dream, that's her. He didn't say anything. He just leaned his head against my shoulder. And I let the tears fall quietly. Weeks turned into months. One day, Ethan told me he was thinking of moving back to town for good. He'd gotten a job offer nearby. When he told me, I tried not to show how happy I was. I just said, you'll be tired of me soon. He laughed. Never, Nana. And in that laugh, I heard the boy he used to be. One evening, I was sitting in the backyard, watching the sunset. Ethan came out holding 2 cups of tea. He handed me one and sat beside me. We didn't speak for a while. The sky turned pink, then orange, then a deep purple. Then he said softly, "I forgive you, Nana." I turned to him, startled. He looked straight ahead, his eyes glistening. "I can't say I understand everything," he continued, "but I know you loved me. You always did. And I guess that's enough." I couldn't hold back my tears. I whispered, "Thank you, my boy. You don't know what that means to me." He smiled faintly. "I think I do." That night, when I went to bed, I prayed, not for forgiveness anymore, but for gratitude. Because sometimes, love comes back, even after you think it's gone forever. It's been 3 years since that day. Ethan visits every Sunday. Sometimes he brings flowers, sometimes he brings stories. Sometimes he just sits quietly beside me, no words needed. We've both changed. We've learned that love isn't about perfection. It's about showing up, again and again, even when it hurts. He's building a family of his own now. And though I may not live long enough to see all his dreams come true, I know one thing for certain. He carries Lily's love, and mine, wherever he goes. Sometimes he'll ask me to tell him stories about when he was small. And I'll tell him about the pancakes, the toy cars, the way he used to hold my hand so tightly when we crossed the street. He'll smile and say, "I remember the smell of your kitchen, Nana. It always felt like home." And I'll say softly, "It still is, sweetheart. It always will be." When people ask about my life, I tell them this. We can't protect our loved ones from every truth. But we can choose how we love them through it. I thought I could guard Ethan from pain by hiding the truth. But in the end, it was truth that brought him back to me. Life has a way of teaching us, gently, sometimes painfully, that love isn't about holding on. It's about letting go, and trusting it will return. If you've listened this far, thank you. Truly, from my heart. This story isn't just mine, it's for anyone who's ever kept the secret out of love, and lost something precious because of it. If you have a story like this, share it in the comments. Tell me where you're from. Because somewhere out there, another heart is waiting to know it's not alone. And remember, forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing love, even when it's hard.